Hello, welcome to Wright Virtual Visits. I'm Anna Kaplan. I'm Executive Director of Graycliff, and I'm Zooming today from Derby, New York, which is right outside of Buffalo. I'm new to the leadership team, and I joined Eric Rogers from the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy and Heidi Ruley from Unity Temple. And we work together to bring you a new Wright Virtual Visits every month. So thank you for tuning in. Before we get started, I want to give a huge thank you to Forever Ready. Allison and Charlie are behind the scenes helping us to create a polished professional event for you, and we're greatly thankful for their services. I want to remind you that each month we're focusing on a specific theme, and we'd love for you to submit your images, your stories, even a little video if you'd like, through the link in each month's Facebook event in reaction to that specific theme, and you'll have a chance to be featured in that particular episode of Wright Virtual Visit. So interact with us on Facebook. We'd love to see your own content. So today we have our two Wright colleagues. Abby Chamberlain Brock is the curator at Hollyhock House, and she's joining us from Los Angeles. She'll be giving us a peek into that property, which was built between 1919 and 1921. And we're pairing that site with the Kraus House in Ebsworth Park in Kirkwood, Missouri. We have Catherine Felt, their executive director here. That home was designed by Wright about 3 decades later in 1950 and is an excellent example of a Usonian design. It's a much smaller footprint than Hollyhock, but it's exciting to see how Wright considered many of the same design strategies. And in particular, our focus today is on the integration of the interior and exterior and those wonderful transition moments and spaces between interiors and exterior natural elements. I'm going to be monitoring the chat during the event, so please feel free to post any questions or comments that you might have, and we'll save some time for Q&A. And I'll let Abby and Catherine take it from here. Abby, we're starting with Hollyhock.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for the wonderful introduction, and I'm excited to be putting Hollyhock House in dialogue with Kraus House. So in 1915, Aline Barnstall met Frank Lloyd Wright in Chicago and approached him about building an avant-garde theater for her to produce her plays. She was a oil heiress and patron of the arts. It wasn't actually until 1919 that she purchased this 36-acre property on Hollywood's eastern edge. And with the acquisition of this large hilltop property, the scope of the commission grew as well. So it became the plans grew to include not just the theater, but a director's house, a cinema, artist studios, shops, actor's abode was the term that they used on the plans, a house for Barnstall, as well as 2 guest houses. And when Frank Lloyd Wright left the project in 1921, all that was actually realized of that project was the main house, as well as 2 guest houses, one of which we're in the process of restoring. And those 2 guest houses are built into the hillside here on Olive Hill, where Hollyhock House sits on the top. And if we could just pull up the aerial view of Hollyhock House, you get a much better sense of how Hollyhock House sits really beautifully on the crown of Olive Hill. You get a great bird's eye view of the house and its motor court and garage, which are just to the north of the house. Wright described in his work at Hollyhock House as California romanza. And romanza is a musical term meaning free form. Here, Wright is grappling with new architectural styles, breaking from his acclaimed prairie style, which he developed in the Midwest, responding to the horizontality of that region. And here, Wright is really embracing architectural precedents distinctive to the American Southwest. Pre-Hispanic architecture with stylized stonework and canted upper walls, Pueblo architecture with flat, livable terraces, which you can see here in this aerial view, and the Spanish, of course, designing Hollyhock House around a large central patio. Sited on the crown of Olive Hill, Hollyhock House has imposing facades, and the west facade, which you can see most clearly here, is symmetrical with long garden walls that are reaching out into the landscape, tying the structure to its site. The house is oriented with strong east-west and north-south axes, which you can appreciate here, but also inside as well. The east-west axis runs through the living room and the patio, connecting not only these spaces within the structure, but also the house itself to the landscape and the broader site plans generally, specifically the planned theater, which would have been directly east of the main house. Today, we're going to take a look at frame vistas that Wright so ingeniously created at a few of Hollyhock House's public spaces. And we're starting with the entry pergola, which extends from the north side of the house on the motor court's eastern edge. Now, before we leave this aerial view, I just wanted to note that the design of the house and the motor court really helped to create privacy for Barnstall in what was always intended to be a bustling art park. The house faces inward on the patio, and the motor court shields traffic along the roadways in what would have been the larger art park. Now, if we could just cut back to my camera. Wonderful. And here we are on this entry pergola, this long covered entry pergola. And we're looking due north here. You get glimpses through these wooden slat screens on the east side of the motor court, which is scoped for future restoration. And to the west, through the stucco wall, between gaps in the stucco wall and the cast concrete stonework, you get glimpses directly to the west of the Grand West Lawn. And this long entry pergola really helped to shield, again, the entrance of the house from the park more generally. And to me, it really helps build the sense of anticipation on arrival as you move closer to these front doors. But I'm just going to pause here and hand it over to Catherine, who's in the motor court at her site as well.
I'm still braving the elements. It is 28 degrees here, and we are experiencing a sleet. So I think my intro may be a little more brief than Abby's was, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about Frank Lloyd Wright's clients, the Krauses, Russell and Ruth Kraus. They reached out to Frank Lloyd Wright in 1948. They were thrilled with his very eager response to design a house for them. They received plans and completed plans and approved plans in 1951, and they actually moved into 1956. So it took a pretty long time for everything to get put together. Right behind me, we enjoy a 10.5-acre park, but when they purchased the property, they purchased it from a family-owned farm. So we have the luxury, as did the Krauses, of having a lot of beautiful natural surroundings around the house. Let's take a look at that drone picture so you get a sense of the layout. Okay, thank you to Kamada for taking this picture. And what you see here is, how the siting was approached. So as we all know, Frank Lloyd Wright had a deep respect for nature, and really he always desired to integrate interior and exterior environments. I think we all know his quote that no house should ever be on a hill or anything. It should be of the hill, belonging to it. Hill and house should live together, each happier for the other. And it's hard not to see that dynamic in the siting of the Kraus house. The east side of the Kraus house is built into the rise of the slope. And on the west side of the house is a large terrace off the living and dining areas with a smaller private lanai off the master bedroom. And both of these terraces were designed into a native persimmon grove. These extensions, these terraces, extend the relatively small square footage of the house by creating outdoor rooms, which forge a close connection between the house and the natural surroundings. Now, I know it's tempting to sort of dwell in this beautiful image, but if you could come back with me on site, that would be great. I want to point out a few things. So as you can see here, the motor court reflects the geometries of the house. The motor court walls provide a beautiful frame to the nature outside. We have a lot of native Missouri trees, and to the right, we're beginning to see the persimmon grove. There are several ways to access the exterior through these parallelogram steps leading out, and this whole house, as you will see over and over, reflects the geometry. It was designed on a parallelogram grid. When you looked at the drone shot, you saw that it was built into the slope of the hill. This 60-degree angle right here of the motor court is where that 60-degree angle is. And if we look at the windows, Abby talked about the approach, building anticipation, but also ensuring privacy for the homeowner. So as you walk up to the Kraus house, it's not obvious where the entry door is. So that ensures that on this public side, the homeowner has privacy. And again, I like the way Abby said it builds anticipation. And also a way to bring the vibrancy and the colors and the geometry into the house. There's a stained glass door. We'll talk more about the role of the stained glass in the Kraus house. But we will be stepping in for right now. I'm going to pass it back. I guess you could say pass the stained glass bar to Abby, and she'll continue. We'll see you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Catherine. And I'm so glad that we could look at those two sets of doors, which both add drama to the approach to the house. Here at Hollyhock House, our doors are done in cast concrete, and they're 250 pounds each. They've got the walls have an inverted step design, which has much in common with pre-Hispanic architecture, which I think Wright is beautifully playing with here. And while Barnstall complained about these doors not working well when she first moved into the house, as you can see, with just the tip of my finger, I'm able to easily slide those open. And we're here now in the foyer of Hollyhock House. The ceiling height is still low in the rooms in these transition spaces. We're getting a quick glimpse in the dining room, and there are these tantalizing views into the rooms ahead and out into the landscape, looking just to the music room. And like we'll see at Kraus House, you can also see all the way through the house to the far end, and you'll just see a glimpse of the light to doors that are on the south facade of the house. We're moving now into the loggia. Again, the ceiling height remains the same as it was in the entrance and foyer. And turning directly west, you can see all the way to the western end of the house here with our monumental living room. These windows that are here situated on the hill for our hilltop site cast just the most beautiful golden evening sunset light. And as Wright designed, Barnstall installed these screens, which she purchased from Wright in 1923, around the ends of the room, as Wright intended, that really helped break the box in this space. So like the mitered glass windows and his later designs, these, especially at sunset hour when the room is filled with golden light, really expand the landscape views. We're looking directly north now into the music room before spinning back around, and we're looking at the loggia again. This is that key transition space between the primary entertaining spaces here at Hollyhock House, the living room and the center patio that this whole structure is designed around. While Frank Lloyd Wright referred to the popular Spanish colonial style used here in Southern California as tawdry Spanish medievalism, there's no denying how well a central patio would function for a residence that was situated at the center of a bustling arts park. got wonderful weather today, nice and crisp, unlike our heat wave a couple weeks ago, not to gloat too much, where the house has very strong symmetries. And for every interior space of what Wright described as a garden house, there is the corresponding exterior one. So the colonnade, which is on the north side, is an open air equivalent of the pergola, which is on the south side of the patio. Here you get a view. There's a passage of a second story passageway, which really helps frame the landscape. And keeping in mind that the complex and the plans really called for the theater to be directly east of the house. And there were plans to have stairs. So you could just imagine Barnstall entertaining here at Hollyhock House in this patio and this monumental living room, bringing people up those stairs after a performance had the theater been realized. And the opening here, and there's a pool directly below it, it serves almost as a proscenium arch. So really playing with the vocabulary of drama and theater in Wright's design for this structure that frames the view out to the east as well as back into the patio where we are now. So I'm just going to hand it back to Catherine, where she's hopefully come in from the cold.
Yes, I have. And I noticed, Abby, you were bragging about the gentle breeze on the warm day. So that was not appreciated here at the Kraus house. Anyway, we are back inside. And as you can tell that we came out of the light from the outside and we've entered a much darker space. And there's a feeling of compression. The small windows on the right side, as we talked about before, is the public side of the house, and they conceal much of what is outside and let in little light. But that is by design. Frank Lloyd Wright wanted the homeowner to feel safe and secure when they entered their home and have privacy. So go ahead and look straight ahead. Your eye is carried to the far end of the house, and as you make your way down this long, relatively tight entry, you are finally released into the largest room of the house. This is the living dining room. And you can see it has some of the signature features of organic design. These are elements you'll probably have seen in other Usonian residents, low seating, built-ins. And what these design features do is to help integrate interior and exterior spaces. You can imagine sitting on that built-in sofa looking out onto the terrace. You feel like you're almost suspended in that persimmon grove. One of the most unique facets of the Kraus house, and we teased it out a little bit walking in, are the beautiful art glass screens. Wright would not have designed this art glass in Usonian homes, but Russell Kraus, the original owner, he and his wife Ruth lived here happily for over 40 years. Russell was a stained glass artist and asked permission to install these screens. And as you can see, they complement the geometric design beautifully. The color palette fits wonderfully, and it provides a decorative element to your view to the outside. And when you're sitting on the terrace, there's almost a sense that you're floating in that persimmon grove. So I want to point out something that is really illustrate this point of design, this design integration. This, as many of you have seen in other houses, is a mitered window. So there's no barrier. No obstruction to see outside into that beautiful grove of native trees. And then also here you have an interior brick wall that is moved seamlessly to the outside. And we'll see a little bit later in the studio how that works. And of course, much to the delight to the thousands of guests that visit here, we can go out on the terrace. We do go out on the terrace. We're not going to do that today for obvious reasons, but this certainly is a way that the Krauses and all of our guests enjoy being part of the outside environment. Again, when you sit on the terrace, it's as if you were suspended in the persimmon tree grove, and it's quite delightful in all seasons. A little bit chilly now, but there you go. I'm gonna hand it back to Abby, and we'll see you in the studio.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. And I loved how you pointed out the corner and the continuity of materials from indoors and out. And it's something that we see here at particularly strongly in the loggia space. The stucco of the interior carries to out, the wood trim extends as you get little glimpses of here. And as you mentioned with art glass, I do think it is quite interesting. Hollyhock House is actually one of the last houses that Wright designed a complete art glass scheme for. There are about 130 art glass windows, and the plans actually did call for art glass panels to be installed here in the loggia, and they were not executed for whatever reason, but either cost overruns or potentially a design decision, because the effect would be so much different to look out onto the center patio if seen through Wright designed art screens. And we're going to have a chance to look at some of the original art glass windows as we move into the dining room. And this is just one of my favorite framings of the landscape here. You can hear the water trickling as part of the larger water feature that has the integration of water running from the eastern edge of the property through this stream element to a moat around the fireplace to a pool on the west facade. I think both Wright and Aline Barnstall were quite captivated with the idea of integrating nature and the potential for indoor-outdoor living that Southern California provided. So we're stepping up here now into the dining room, and you get a great sense of some of the art glass that was designed, evoking the hollyhock, which was Aline Barnstall's favorite flower. And Wright designed these windows and set them low on the wall so that they could be best appreciated while seated here at the table. And I'm just squatting down to give you a glimpse at what the landscape view of the garden area is outside to the north. And looking at plans, I do find it really interesting to see that Wright's original concept for this dining room called for this scale art glass windows on both the north wall here, but also the south wall. And then with modifications to the design, he replaced what were going to be windows with these 4 sets of doors that provided direct access out onto the center patio, really helping to strengthen the connection of this space with the direct corresponding exterior one. And you get these wonderful views of the columns and the colonnade, these abstractions of the hollyhock motif that form the capitals. And we can just step directly out into this patio, which Barnstall and her family used quite a bit. We see wonderful photos with wrought iron and wicker furniture set out on the lawn, intended as a space for outdoor living. I'm just giving you a slightly different view on the center patio, looking now directly at the pergola, which of course frames views of the landscape beautifully as well. And then a glimpse at this water feature from a different direction. And I'm going to send it back over to Catherine, who's waiting in the studio.
As is typical, the kitchen or the workspace, as Frank Lloyd Wright would refer to it, is right off of the living dining room space. We're going to walk through. I wanted to point out a window that Falling Water has in their tower. You can see that this literally frames the exteriors just like 2 pictures. And with the windows open, we can hear this beautiful, soft tapping of the snow on the ground. If we move through the kitchen, we will get to take a little tour of the kitchen, and we'll walk through to Russell's studio. I think I mentioned that Russell was an artist. He shared with Frank Lloyd Wright that he would be working from his home, and he was very influential in, just helping Mr. Wright design a plan that was responsive to his professional needs. So you can walk right in, come into this studio area. It's flooded with natural light. They have there's a skylight, and that's just so representative of the geometric influences all over this home. We know from our paper collection, he wanted a fireplace in his office, which he received. And then we have this amazing bank of windows that really allow you to see this huge expanse of the park. You have another mitered window, and that, again, I think in this perspective, you can see how this is a seamless wall that moves from the interior to the exterior. Again, really breaking down that box, as we know Frank Lloyd Wright wanted to do, and really removing any barriers to a sense of integration between interior and exterior. And you can't help but be in this room and think about a working artist, somebody like Russell, who was a multi-faceted artist, but he made his living by designing stained glass. And I'm sure that this studio environment really fueled his creativity and really inspired him as an artist. So it's a special room, and we understand it was Russell's favorite room, and a lot of visitors really appreciate this being the last room they see on their tour. So that's about it. I'm really looking forward to questions, so I'm going to hand it back to Anna, and I'll be available for whatever people want to ask about.
Thanks, Catherine. Abby, I think we're all channeling the weather that you have, and Catherine, Kraus House is just as wonderful, even during a sleet storm. And actually, Catherine, question for you: while you're standing there next to that, glorious mitered window, how does it hold up in this type of weather?
It is remarkable. I always do this as a homeowner. I'm like, oh, it's going to be drafty. I just know it. And it is not. It's remarkable, actually. And there's nothing in our paper collection that indicated that the Krauses had any problem with them. So, all good.
Great news. We do have a couple questions. Speaking of windows and thinking about the stained glass at both sites, I'm curious, how much is original? And whoever wants to take it can go first.
I can go first because it's such an easy answer. All of our stained glass is original. Again, this was art glass that was designed by Russell Kraus. Mm-hmm. Frank Lloyd Wright did not indicate that there should be art glass. This was very unusual to have it in a Usonian home, but he did ask for permission and gave the design to Taliesin for approval, which he received. But it is all original.
And there's 130 art glass windows here at Hollyhock House, and about 100 of those are original. And we've had to do some, there've been a couple different campaigns of restoration. So the work was originally done by Judson Studios, which is a Highland Park-based Los Angeles art glass firm, and they're still in practice. And we worked with them most recently, as of last year, on restoring a pair of the doors in the owner's room. So it's wonderful that we can have that continuity of craftsmanship when we do have to do restorations occasionally.
Yes, definitely. Abby, what was the date of that aerial photo that you showed us?
It was about 1925. So the landscaping is starting to come in a bit, but we can date it most clearly because you see some of the materials coming in for plans for the Schindler Terrace garden that was developed on the property.
Mm-hmm. Great. Catherine, question for you. Do you have a sense of what the cost was to build the Kraus house?
Wow, that's a tough question. We didn't get a sense from Russell exactly how much. He said 3 times. He would use the reference 3 times as much as was predicted. It was forecasted to be a $35,000 build. He paid Frank Lloyd Wright, the Krauses paid Frank Lloyd Wright commission off of that $35,000 number. We are in the process of digitizing our paper collection, and we think that may give us a little bit more intel on exactly how much it cost.
Great. Catherine, are there any books about the Kraus house that exist? We had some.
There are. There's a book that was written by Jane Hession, and it continues to be an amazing guide about the design, the construction, restoration of the house. It has great pictures. It's a hardbound book, and it's available for purchase either when you come here for a tour or through our website, ebsworthpark.org.
Wonderful. Well, I think we're going to wrap up the Q&A. I really want to thank you both. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Catherine. This was an incredibly special experience. And I want to remind our viewers that the original goal of this virtual series was to support our public sites during the pandemic. And now that many sites are open again for public tours and programming, we want to encourage you to seek them out. We're going to put up the links to Hollyhock's and the Kraus House's websites. Hollyhock is currently closed for in-person tours, but they plan on opening this season for self-guided tours. In the meantime, they are very active with virtual opportunities. You can access those at hollyhockhousevirtual.org or by tuning in for the site's In Focus live tours that are presented on the first and third Fridays of every month at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's on their Facebook page, Hollyhock's Facebook page. Next Friday, March 4th, their docent and conservation volunteer, Paul Cozy, will present on their iconic cast art stone, covering everything from original design to the recent restorations. So be sure to seek that out through Facebook. The Kraus House opens for tours beginning next week. So on March 5th. You can reserve your tour today through their website at ebsworthpark.org. So please make the trip, support our public sites. Thank you all for tuning in. Our next Wright Virtual Visits is at a special day and time. It's Wednesday, March 16th at 11 a.m. Eastern, which is 10 a.m. Central, and bright and early at 8 a.m. Pacific. And the focus will be on wing spread. We had this opportunity. We wanted to take advantage of it. Wing spread is the Herbert F. Johnson home. It's in Wind Point, Wisconsin, designed and built in the late 1930s. And it's now a public site managed by the Johnson Foundation. So you don't want to miss that. And if you happen to be on the West Coast and it's a little too early, we will post the recording on YouTube and make that available through our Facebook page. So be sure to like our page, stay in touch, and please help us spread the word. Thank you all for your support, and we hope to see you next month.
Thank you.